When you get into a casual conversation with an acquaintance over Animaniacs, they're usually going to start thinking of two segments in particular, the Warner siblings and Pinky and the Brain. And not just because they were the only two to return in the 2020 reboot, they were always the most heavily promoted and produced segments. The Warner siblings were the de facto hosts of Animaniacs, and Pinky and the Brain were breakout stars who got two whole spin-offs to themselves. I have covered both and am part of the problem. What about everyone else? Most of them are in the cult following status. Animaniacs fans know them well, but the general public don't. What I'm getting at is Goodfeathers should be more popular. Look at these guys. How can you turn your attention away from them? They're colourful little birds in a cartoon made for kids that are based on Goodfellas, a mafia movie directed by Martin Scorsese that has a lot of swearing and shooting and drugs in it. The question isn't how did they get away with it, the question is who would dare to stop them. There was a point here beyond simply pushing boundaries though. Like everything in Animaniacs, the Goodfeathers were here to give you a good time, usually through laughter, and their origins can be traced back to Deanna Oliver, an improv teacher at Groundlings in LA who had broken into animation by voicing the brave little toaster in the movie of the same name in 1987. Then, 3 years later, she was brought on to Tiny Toon Adventures as a writer by her Groundlings friend Sherry Stoner. When it came time to pitch ideas for Animaniacs in 1991, Deanna drew inspiration from some pigeons that had come to stay in her backyard one day and never seemed to leave no matter how much bread she gave them. Her initial idea was for a pigeon city, but producer Tom Ruger got her to adjust the setting to better fit in with the rest of the world they were creating. The Goodfeathers were among the first characters to be featured in Animaniacs, getting cameos in its premiere episode, then properly debuting in the fourth, which premiered on September 16, 1993. While they weren't the most popular or acclaimed segments, and I mean nowhere near the big three, they were still popular enough to stay a recurring segment throughout the first two seasons. Their prominence diminished in the Kids WB run for various factors, but I'll get into those when I get to those. Like many characters, their last on-screen appearance for the longest time was in Wakko's Wish, released on VHS on December 21st, 1999. And the less said about how they were treated in the 2020 reboot for Hulu, the better. In an interview with IGN, reboot producer Wellesley Wild pointed to the Goodfeathers in particular as a segment they were unwilling to bring back.
Like a parody of Goodfellas now would seem so dated.
While I have respect for Wild, he wrote PTV, I didn't, this decision just seemed dismissive and short-sighted. But given how truncated the reboot was compared to the original, I can't even assume it was his choice. And who cares if Goodfellas references are dated? It's a timeless movie, and it's just funny that Animaniacs was the show to give possibly its biggest tribute in larger pop culture. It's something the franchise should wear on its sleeve. Unlike my full series reviews, I'll go episode by episode, explaining what I like about them, then moving on to the next. Those pigeons, man. Always up to something. We begin with Goodfeathers the Beginning. In New York City, a pigeon named Squit narrates that he's always wanted to be a Goodfeather because it means he'll be a somebody. We then see him on a statue of Christopher Columbus, and you see what he means, he has nowhere to go but up. We're then introduced to Bobby and Pesto, two of the somebodies he wants to join up with. Tough as they may be, they're entertaining as clear parodies of Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci respectively. It makes perfect sense really. De Niro sounds like a pigeon, and Pesci has the personality of one. Squit is modelled off Ray Liotta, who was relatively less established at the time, but with his wide eyes and enormous smile, it's clear he's going to be the pretty boy of the group, as pretty as a pigeon can be. But before Bobby and Pesto take him seriously, we get our first of the Pesto misunderstanding gags, where he'll take a compliment Squit gives him the wrong way.
Well, I said you're tough, that's all.
What am I, a plate of dry steak butt meat here to amuse you?
This routine is based on the scene from Goodfellas where Henry calls Tommy a funny guy, and he turns it into a confrontation. But whereas that scene ends with Tommy revealing he's just pulling his leg, Pesto is apparently more unhinged than his gangster counterpart. But their fighting ceases upon the entrance of the God Pigeon. This imposing old bird is based on Don Corleone from The Godfather, and if you thought Marlon Brando was hard to understand, you weren't the only one. Only Bobby can decipher what he says, and what he says is that to enter the Goodfeathers, Squid has to come up with some food. And wouldn't you know it, a bagel falls on the road as they're talking. The rest of the episode is them trying to get the bagel. Sounds simple, right? Not in New York. They get pushed around so much by human traffic that it turns into a tour of the city. From the Boston Marathon, last minute correction, adoy, it's the New York City Marathon. But Boston Marathon is easier to say, I can see why it's been around longer. To the airport, to the subway station, to the confirmation that pigeons can be trusted to guide traffic. But they bicker and fail, only for the god pigeon to show up and get the bagel himself. Traffic stops just for him, and he doesn't even need a hat! That raises a lot of questions about just how powerful this guy is. Despite failing, he accepts Squit into the group. Admittedly a cop-out ending, but there wasn't really any other way to end this. And Squit's so happy he could kiss someone.
Fat Jolly slobbering all over me over here.
And that's the introduction of the Goodfeathers. This episode is the most detailed with Goodfellas references, but it's not at any cost to the story, characters, or the bustling regional atmosphere they've got to start playing in. Richard Stone's background music has a bouncy flair to it, Maurice LaMarche, John Mariano, and the late Chick Venera all do wonderful jobs bringing their characters to life, and so do the animators. Good team effort. Their second episode, West Side Pigeons, aired 2 weeks later, and is a clear parody of not just the musical West Side Story, but its 1961 movie adaptation. By coincidence, after producing Animaniacs, Steven Spielberg would make his own West Side Story adaptation in 2021. Pesto's no Rachel Zegler, but this episode tested if the cast had singing chops, and succeeded decently in that category.
Here comes the Goodfeathers cooing at you, that no sparrow can perch on Scorsese's statue.
The only change they had to make was Bobby's singing voice, which would sometimes be provided by Jeff Bennett instead of John Mariano. What this episode also proved was that Goodfeathers as a segment wasn't a one-trick pony. It could do more than just parody Goodfellas, it could take inspiration from anything. And West Side Pigeons is a condensed retelling of West Side Story. Instead of jets versus sharks, it's pigeons versus sparrows. They fight over territory in a theatric way, with the Goodfeathers always winning. What the episode also establishes, though, is the importance of the Goodfeathers perch, a Martin Scorsese statue in Scorsese Park. That's their home, and they won't stand for anyone else claiming it. At another confrontation later that night, Squit meets a girl sparrow named Carluta, and they hit it off in a comically quick fashion. Like, even though Squit stated his desire to fall in love already, the two turn into lovers in a matter of seconds.
I love you.
I love you back.
From here, Squid cares less about the next fight with the sparrows, and more about migrating with Carluta. And I can't blame him, because the sparrows aren't especially interesting. They have funny names like Chicky and Noodles, and some distinct designs, but they only serve a parodic purpose. Same with Krupp Kitty, who eats Squid and a sparrow, but spits them back out, expressing disgust at the musical format of the episode.
That's it. I'm sticking to a crescendo-free diet of mute mice.
But the songs are good. They're all parodies of West Side Story songs, of course. That and one of the confrontations taking place below a Leonard Bernstein memorial concert shows that they cared about the source material a great deal. But it goes at a brisk pace, and the final act of West Side Pigeons ticks off big plot beats one after another. We get the god pigeon showing up, accidentally muddying the waters, Carluta reuniting with her real boyfriend and flying off, the Scorsese statue crumbling for the first and not last time.
There's a statue of Coppola down the street.
And Squid swearing off girls, before a blue jay captures his attention. And I've seen enough regular show to know that blue jay romances are a minefield, so good luck, buddy. There was supposed to be another song after this, but it was transplanted into a later episode, I guess because this was running long and already pretty packed. The first 2 Goodfeathers episodes are their longest, clocking in at 10 and 12 minutes, while most of the others sit in the 6 to 9 minute range. Animaniacs had a malleable format. The first 2 seasons were all produced in one big clump, and then pieced together in episode packages that could either link thematically or neatly fill up 20-odd minutes. The next time the Goodfeathers appeared, it was in a thematically linked episode package. Episode 20 was about film production, with the Warner segment, Hearts of Twilight, parodying the documentary Hearts of Darkness, The sister segment, The Boids, gives a light-hearted look at the set of an Alfred Hitchcock movie. In real life, it was 1963's The Birds, a horror movie about birds. Naturally, Bobby doesn't think this will be bad for their image and hatches a plan for them to sneak onto the set. Squit's rationale clears things up.
Bobby was sure we could get parts in The Boids. Why? Because we were Boids.
Because they were Boids. Impeccable logic. Unfortunately for them, they're repeatedly mistreated by the director, stagehands, and fellow actors. But what can they do? Go to Human Resources? They snuck in, and Human Resources only covers humans. The movie looks terrible anyway. It doesn't seem to have any substance beyond a woman being tormented by birds. Maybe they're only filming the action scenes, but either way, it's a spot-on parody of what it must have been like to produce the birds. The Goodfeathers' biggest personal hurdle is fitting in with the crows and seagulls on set. The crows in particular don't take kindly to them being intruders, and their leader, a Jack Nicholson pastiche named Wakko, is happy to see them suffer to the point of quitting.
Those birds will quit before the day is over.
That doesn't happen, as the Goodfeathers get some references out of him.
Here comes Johnny!
There's one, and getting his head poking out of a smashed door. Who put this Kubrick in my Hitchcock? Was it Scorsese? Even though they get back at one of the crows, the rest of the day's filming doesn't get easier. They discover a cage that the stars of the movie are in, and I'm not sure we want to know the details of how they replace the stars, but even after this, they get run over by a car. So they decide to call it a day with just one work shift in the business of show business. The Boids isn't considered a top tier episode, but if there's one thing that keeps it from being skippable to me, it's the disguises the Goodfeathers wear throughout. They look styling. But yeah, this episode isn't as entertaining to me as the first two. The story being this straight line sequence of events lacking escalation and payoff has something to do with that. I don't think it's bad or anything, just mixed. Lucky for the Goodfeathers, they found success in real-world showbiz. They got a bunch of cameos throughout the rest of the show, sometimes as part of the group, sometimes as New Yorkers, but occasionally there's less rhyme or reason and more because the script writers, board artists, or animators threw them in. Their group appearances are plentiful. They're part of the Monkey Song, with Squit providing flute solos, they're part of Nighty Night Tune, there's Santa's Reindeer in 'Twas the Day Before Christmas, and they're performing the Macadamia alongside everyone else. It was either this or the Schmerzgehoven. They're not often given focus in these cameos, but I guess that's the point of a cameo. Perhaps their best in this category is as peasants in the medieval special Spellbound, and Squit is asking the real questions here.
You're whining. Are we getting paid?
I guess that's their way of parodying the "fuck you, pay me" line. The other major category of Goodfeathers cameo is the thematic cameo. If we're in New York, they'll show up. If we're learning about Italian art, they'll be there. If the dove from the story of Noah's Ark is out sick, Squit will be its understudy. The show wasn't overflowing with Goodfeathers cartoons or anything, so they ended up having more cameos than starring roles. You're left wondering what else they're capable of. The only way to know for sure is by watching the rest of their episodes, including Ta-da-dump, 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 Dump Dump. This episode is the first to not be written by Deanna Oliver, instead by Tom Ruger and Charles M. Howell IV. And it's also the first to not be parody-focused. Instead, it's a sitcom-y conundrum that you'd expect cartoon pigeons to get stuck in. Squit and Pesto are just looking for food scraps today, but somehow, the regular no-name pigeons in the park have better luck getting food than them. But Bobby comes in, knowing a place they could get some sustenance, and it's a ship full of garbage. Yes, it's disgusting, and they're still unlucky in their search for food, but this lays on thick how hard it is for wild animals to find food. It's not glamorous, it's the hard existence of urban wildlife. And it only gets harder when Pesto gets stuck in a plastic six-pack holder. They aren't manufactured as often these days, but there was controversy in the 90s about the use of them, because if they weren't cut up after use and properly recycled, animals could get their heads stuck in them, especially birds and fish. Hence why they took characters that were already having difficulty surviving and nearly choked them. Spoilers, they all get stuck in it after some failed attempts at freeing Pesto. They're lucky they're small enough that the rings go down to their bodies, because if they were stuck on their necks, this might have been too harsh. As is, we can learn to take better care of our trash and laugh at all the zany ways these guys are dealing with it. The funniest bits are when Bobby makes it clear Pesto was driving him more insane than usual.
How about me over here?
Come here.
Eh?
Come over here. Are you finished?
You get a good feel for their interplay that's gone underdeveloped until now, and it's accurate to their Goodfellas counterparts. While Tommy is more hair-trigger with resorting to verbal and physical violence, Jimmy is more cool and collected, while also being just as capable of intimidation and making a mess. And Squit, like Henry, is just looking on, losing whatever innocence he still had. The good news is they break out of the six-pack holder by pretending to be soda cans, but the bad news is they miss the ship full of garbage, and now they're defunct leprechauns.
I just said we're out of luck this time, that's all.
Like we're a bunch of defunct leprechauns here? Is that it?
I'd call it a bittersweet ending. They haven't got lunch, but they've got their freedom. It's a good episode, and the animation plays a part. This is the only full Goodfeathers episode to be outsourced to Tokyo Movie Shinsha, fan favorites for the Spielberg Ruger cartoons. I kind of prefer the work of Wang with the Goodfeathers. They drew them a bit chunkier and gave them the most appealing facial expressions, but TMS's prestige among Warner Bros. Animation fans is well earned. With their 5th episode, Hiccup, Deanna's back to write them, but it's another light situation comedy akin to Da-Da-Dump. And wouldn't you know it, it's another one where they're picking around for scraps. After Joe Pesci makes a cameo running by, we see the Goodfeathers are eating what appear to be pickles. I say appear because the description states it was a breadcrumb. There's nothing wrong with cartoon food being nondescript as long as we know it's food. But then again, the description states that Pesto's the one who gets the hiccups and not Squit, so maybe they got a magic parallel universe version of the episode. These guys, they really know their Goodfeathers. In any case, Squit gets the hiccups, which interrupts his and the others' siesta, so something must be done about it. Bobby and Pesto conduct a series of remedies, which are as entertaining as they are ineffective. I think we all know the deal with Hiccup episodes. They're all about curing him, but all you have to do in real life is wait for your diaphragm to relax. Not that these birds are experts at looking after themselves. They don't even know what a duodenum is. What amateurs! Hiccup's got more of what I like about the previous episode, Bobby and Pesto arguing while Squit doesn't know what to do. Bobby is indirectly telling him throughout the episode that hiccups have resulted in Goodfeather fatalities already.
Remember Lippy Lombardi? Had hiccups so bad his neck caved in? Remember Cool Boy Capizio? Had hiccups so bad his head collapsed? The God Pigeon says, remember Fluffer Frittata? Had hiccups so bad his torso dissolved.
So he goes from not at all worried about the hiccups to scared for his life. This works on some level, as when the God Pigeon takes notice of Squit's condition, he gives him a good scare. Well, he gives all of them a good scare, and just like that, his hiccups are gone. So when I rewatch this episode, I think maybe Bobby knows hiccups aren't fatal, and he's just buttering Squit up for a good scare. Maybe he knows this isn't a real tactic in curing him and he found a way to make the day interesting. Or maybe none of this was planned and even the God Pigeon just spooked his underlings for kicks and giggles. Whatever interpretation you subscribe to, this is a great episode, one of their best so far. Animaniacs did another Hiccups episode later with Wakko, Soda Jerk, where the stakes and scale are considerably amped up. So if you want an Animaniacs episode about the hiccups, I'd say that's a more typical take for this show, but even still, Hiccup remains a fun time too. I'd say it's better simply because it's got less going on. It's just a silly good time, exactly what it wants to be. It wouldn't be fair if the Goodfeathers were left out of the Animaniacs Stew special. And you're right. Squit and Bobby join Buttons in only appearing in the wraparounds, but Pesto appears alongside Runt in the Rita and Runt episode, No Place Like Homeless. John P. McCann's first of 2 goes with the Goodfeathers. Right off the bat, the dynamic here is the best thing about it. Pesto doesn't want to be there, but Runt already treats him like a friend. They're 2 of the biggest polar opposites on the show, and now they're stuck together, looking for shelter. While arguing, Pesto facetiously asks if he's friends with a local billionaire, and let's think about this, even if he was, that billionaire's probably off on an island somewhere. But before long, they find a nice old lady who takes Runt in with open arms, but not Pesto. You can see where this is going when Pesto sneaks in anyway, and we meet the old lady's other pet, Crackers. This parrot is a troublemaker if I ever did see one. A smug, self-absorbed troublemaker who will scare Runt without a second thought. You're kind of glad when Pesto beats him up. But before we're too annoyed by this setup, the old lady finds Pesto there and tosses him and Runt out. This is a pretty short episode, mind you, so no issue with us getting out of this place so soon. Crackers is a piece of work, and the old lady acts irrationally.
Come here, boy, get out of the rain. Oh my. Get out! The both of you! You were in this together the whole time! It was a plot to hurt my crackers!
Honestly, better to be in the rain than live with these miscreants. But it ends on a sweet enough note, with Pesto deciding to sing and Runt complimenting him.
La 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 la. There, you happy? That was good, Pesto. You think it was great? No, but it was good.
Pesto's reluctance to sing at first could be a reference to Joe Pesci's on and off music career. I'll just say he's a much better actor than he is a singer. You're left wanting more of this Pesto and Runt dynamic. They hit upon something great here. It makes up for Squit and Bobby either getting the day off or a cut role elsewhere in the special. This is also the first Goodfeathers adjacent segment where the Warners don't make one of their cameos. So that speaks to a high degree of confidence in them to hold the viewer's attention. That's only proven with John P. McCann's other Goodfeathers credit, Boids, which also saw Tom Ruger's return to them, if just for the story. It's 1918, and the Western Front isn't giving up against the Germans. We hear Squit narrate that the Goodfeathers joined the Great War as messengers to become heroes, but 4 years in and they haven't been called upon. In fact, it looks like all the other messenger pigeons have been called upon already. Ours are clearly agitated by having to wait so long, and it's not like they can understand humans, so their fate is inconclusive. Until the 9th Brigade needs to be withdrawn, so this general gives them a message to deliver. Squit gets the message tied to his foot, and Bobby and Pesto are sent out just because. What ensues is bombs, trenches, and illiteracy, but good on this trio for sticking it out and even taking down an Iron Cross in the process. Everyone had a part to play in that. Bobby got the idea to blind it with the sunlight, Pesto saved Squit when he was getting chased by the plane, and Squit of course was carrying the message anyway. I'm making a deal out of the fact that this general decided to send out 3 pigeons at once, and probably just so the Goodfeathers could continue to bounce off each other for jokes and plot points, but I think for subject matter as serious as this, it's good that all our main characters are clearly heroes.
Are you saying I'm a hero? That I'm some kind of large sandwich filled with lunch meat and lettuce sent here to nourish you?
As we know, 1918 was the last year of World War I, but I'm uncertain if this mission they're put on is based on anything in particular. They're American messenger pigeons clearly working for a British guy.
Pigeons are so dirty. Why don't we have messenger cats? They're much cleaner animals.
And the ending makes it seem much less serious than something you'd read in a history book.
Thank you, General Admission. I was able to sweep the enemy from the field, dust his flanks, and wash and wax his rear echelons.
The Goodfeathers' part to play could be based on the legendary World War I messenger pigeon Cher Ami, who was shot down and attacked but managed to deliver its message. None of the Goodfeathers were wounded, but they were dropped into a compelling war story. The odds were stacked against them and they beat those odds. And now they're veterans, real G.I. Joes. It sticks out in an episode package that was overall about war and soldierhood, when the latter 2 segments are much sillier, allowing this to stand out as something more serious and earnest. Can you believe that we're at the 8th Goodfeathers episode, and only now they have their own theme song?
When the birds hit the street looking for food to eat, that's Goodfeathers. That's Goodfeathers.
A quick parody of That's Amore, breezy and catchy, and it has a clear shot of the Scorsese statue's plaque near the end, a message that can apply to both the statue and the segments. This theme only appears before a handful of Goodfeathers episodes, but which segments get intros, how many intros, and how often they play was a game of roulette. Nevertheless, we're back to parodies with Raging Bird, a pretty clear play on the 1980 Scorsese movie Raging Bull, but the episode shares elements of that, On the Waterfront, and Rocky. We get to see what passes as entertainment for the birds of New York, tournaments of physical strength atop a high-rise roof. The crows, the seagulls, and even the sparrows all spectate. At the moment, the reigning champion is Pretty Boy Robin. You can take a guess what species of bird he is. Bobby's got a desire to punch his lights out, But what really sets him off about Robin is his prettiness, which the other Goodfeathers and his girlfriend Lana keep egging him on over.
Everybody says he's good looking.
Who says he's good looking? Do you say that?
No way, not me. Forget about it.
Well, he is kinda cute.
Lana is loosely based on Kathy Moriarty's character Vicky in Raging Bull, which is important here for the parody, but less so in her later outings. But back to the story, Bobby confronts Robin and gets challenged to a match, so he's got a week to prepare, but his friends can only do so much by riling him up. That's where this tiny owl named Max steps in, forcefully offering to be Bobby's manager, the Mickey to his Rocky. He apparently got pummeled to this condition by Robin some time ago, so this is as much for him as it is for Bobby. There's more riding on this match now, so what better time for a training montage? How does a pigeon train? The same way as everyone else, by punching things and running. This part is where the Rocky influence gets so blatant that they have Rocky himself show up. By the time the fight kicks off, he's in no better shape than he was originally, but the threat of someone killing his bird gives him the strength to turn Robin into a pile of broken glass. I have to praise Leonard Robinson for the expressions at this point in the episode. They're off-model, but they're visceral and unique. And you have to wonder about Robin's role as a Rocky stand-in.
Yo, Adrian!
He was clearly the hero of his own story, or more likely the loser. It makes it more nuanced whether Bobby earned the prize and Lana's respect, until the God Pigeon comes in to screw him over, royally.
The God Pigeon says he's been coolin' with my Boyd.
After that whole heartbreak, it ends with Bobby deciding to leave the ring because Squit and Pesto's fights are all the entertainment he needs. This seems to be a theme with Bobby's endeavours, get a new hustle for one day, then drop it like yesterday's shine box. But he's right, this is a great end to a great episode. I've seen that this is one of the larger Animaniacs fandom's favourite Goodfeathers episodes, so even if some people are more lukewarm on them, they have got hits under their belt that have stuck with folks. They earned a legacy along with much of the rest of the Animaniacs cast. After 1993, they would appear on merchandise such as toys, books, shirts, and collectible cards, and keep making cameos in Pinky and the Brain when that spun off in 1995. This is definitely them, this is more of a nod than a proper appearance, and they play the part of stormtroopers in Star Warners, asking the most important question of the bunch.
Bobby, do we bless them first?
A little bit. Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
See, I told you.
My opinion on that whole matter is, if it's George Lucas's movie, he can do whatever he wants with it, it's his personal art. But I and many others felt it was frustrating that the original editions wound up being so hard to rediscover for so long. Some comedy about the situation can lighten the discussion a smidge, and it's so funny to me that the Goodfeathers were chosen for this joke. Other less direct tie-ins include some of the video games. The 16-bit Animaniacs game, but only the Genesis version, you know how much blast processing it takes to render the God Pigeon. The Animaniacs version of 10-Pin Alley for the PlayStation, but only as the game's villains, betting against the player and looking horrifically 32-bit while doing so. And recently, some of their feathers could be spotted on the Animaniacs stage in Multiverses. Missed your chance to see them there? Yeah, me too. But their most prolific off-screen gig was DC Comics' Animaniacs tie-in, which they printed from 1995 to 2000. The Goodfeathers got the occasional story starting with issue 15. From the few that I've sat down and read, they're as entertaining as you'd expect from a 90s DC comic. They babysat some tough fledglings, got starstruck by Frank Pigeonatra, and fell into a few squabbles with their loved ones, the Girlfeathers. Heading into 1994, they got an episode to themselves. This of course sees the introduction of Sasha and Kiki and the reintroduction of Lana. They're just playing in a water fountain as Squit narrates, assuming that they only have dating the Goodfeathers going for them.
See, we thought the only thing they had going for themselves was being hooked up with the Goodfeathers.
And guess who show up? What I like about Pesto puffing his chest up here is that this is what male pigeons do to impress potential mates. Someone on the team did their research into pigeon courtship. But the Girlfeathers aren't impressed and still want to be left alone, so they announce an impromptu trip to the Grand Canyon, girls only. Squit feels rejected until Bobby and Pesto tell him that they're just playing hard to get and are actually inviting them on the trip. They are, of course, acting delusional. There was no flirtation or hidden signals. The Girlfeathers made it clear they wanted to spend some time away from the boys.
Sorry, but you're not invited.
See ya.
Beat you later.
Bye-bye.
But this is how relationships can be, especially at the start. Of course, what the Goodfeathers do here by following them across the country is wrong and creepy in real-life human terms, but for a cartoon where they're supposed to be in the wrong, it makes its message clear. I'm lumping Squit in with the others in being in this wrong, because while he's more certain the Girlfeathers want to be left alone, he still joins in following them this whole great distance. He's an adult and could have turned back at any time on his own terms. Perhaps there's a second message in here about peer pressure, because Squit has always been an impressionable character, and this whole trip is taking that and running with it. Or rather, flying with it. And flying a great distance. They all travel from New York to Niagara Falls to somewhere in the Midwest to Kentucky to the Grand Canyon in Arizona. It's funnily geographically accurate. The only issue is this Niagara Falls sign being misspelled, but the show itself pointed that out long before I could. Those middle two locations could be vague to a non-American like myself, but the Midwest is full of cornfields, and Squit later makes a reference to KFC, and we all know what the K stands for.
Kentucky Fried Pigeon. Coming to Lake Edna, in your neck of the woods.
The scenery changes up, but the plot doesn't do anything different from location to location. The Girlfeathers talk for a bit, the Goodfeathers barge in, the Girlfeathers leave, the Goodfeathers suffer slapstick. Really hammers in that this is bad relationship behavior, but in a funny way. And the Girlfeathers still have little pockets of time to talk about their interests. They have more going on than just being girlfriend characters, sharing opinions, interests, and aspirations with each other, and it feels authentic enough.
I'm gonna design nests for all the girly birds in the neighborhood.
Oh, do mine. You could do that, Lana. You got great taste in twigs.
Tiny Toons and Animaniacs were some of the first cartoons to have more than a few female writers on staff, so they could add a feminine touch if the need ever arose. The voice acting also adds to their characterizations. These three characters share two voice actors. Sasha and Kiki are voiced by Trace McNeil, and Lana is voiced by Gail Mathias. Those sessions must have been strange to record together, but you do get a read of what Kiki is like, learn a bit more about Lana, and Sasha, well, being loosely based on Lorraine Bracco and her performance as Karen in Goodfellas, you can guess how rough her relationship with Squit is. But finally, when they get to the Grand Canyon, Sasha invites the boys over, to which they still misread her very clear admittance. The God Pigeon himself randomly shows up at the Grand Canyon just to tell them to man up and show that they love them. Which they do, for a few seconds, before getting into one of their own squabbles and falling down the canyon. As long as it's not trash, this is apparently fine. So even though the Goodfeathers hardly learned anything today, all that chatting the Girlfeathers did pays off for the final joke.
All they got going for themselves is being hooked up with us.
You can say that again.
Please!
It's ironic how, for all this stuff about their lives they set up here, you can count the Girlfeathers' roles as a group on one hand. Their only appearances outside the Goodfeathers segments are in the Little Bluebird episodes, out in the background when the mother bird goes down to get food. They only appear in 2 more Goodfeathers episodes, starting with the next one on the agenda. With 3 you get Eggroll. By setup alone, this one sticks out from the rest of the show for its strange alterations to the dynamics. Sasha is now Pesto's sister, which is why she's forcing him to watch over her egg while she's out flapping with the Girlfeathers. This is a new wrinkle to Pesto's world that explains why he's got such a temper.
Adorable? What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying that I am adorable?
Don't start with that, Pesto!
But this isn't relevant beyond this single situation. In fact, there's a wedding in Pesto's family coming up, and Sasha doesn't make it. What's also news is that Sasha has an egg and is expecting it to hatch. Since she's paired up with Squit, you can infer that Squit's the potential father, which would make him Pesto's brother-in-law. This is another thing that gets ignored later on when the Girlfeathers plead to become egg hatchers anew, so it seems Sasha's exact relationship with Pesto and Squit is only relevant to this episode. It might have been written later than the others after more ideas were considered, owing to these continuity errors, but if you care less about the Goodfeathers canon than I do, sorry I've got you thinking about all this now too. I've brushed this weirdness before, and it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that Pesto does care about this egg. but not enough to keep an eye on it when Squit and Bobby come over with a curious look. He stops sitting on the egg and it rolls away, completely accurate to how terrible real-life pigeon nests are. If it's just one piece of straw that prevents it from rolling away, that's good enough for them. But this is a big stereotypical cartoon nest and it still rolls away. Bobby happens to notice with his mystic third and fourth eyes, but it luckily doesn't get damaged when it miraculously rolls down the entire building the nest was on. If there is a baby in there, it's going to need all the love and attention it can get when it hatches. But the threat of being shoved in a dumpster by his sister is enough for Pesto and the other Goodfeathers to go across the city chasing it. It hitches a water slide, then a limo ride. What a lucky egg. But the Goodfeathers aren't so lucky. By now, it's like a baby on a construction site kind of cartoon, the sort of thing Buttons and Mindy took more influence from. But to see the Goodfeathers in one of those shows that they have the capacity to care about a fellow pigeon, even one that isn't born yet. Their last hurdle is this boy who takes the egg and adds it to his egg collection, which perplexes his off-screen mother, voiced by Deanna Oliver.
I found a bird egg! Oh no, out! Not in the house, Zachy! What is it with you and eggs?
Calling it here, the mother is one of the survey ladies. And yes, this kid loves collecting eggs. I'm surprised this wasn't packaged in an Easter special. With no hope for picking out the right egg in time, the god pigeon shows up and suggests they just take all the eggs. This is a very bad idea. It would have taken them a lot of time to get all the eggs back to the building, most of them aren't even pigeon eggs, and the Girlfeathers are obviously going to be suspicious when they get back. I think the god pigeon knows this. Look at that smile. That's the smile of someone pulling a prank. At least this ending gives us two good bits. Bobby greeting a duckling to the world.
Are you quacking at me? Are you quacking at me?
And what the whole episode was leading to. A pun.
I said it went for an egg roll, that's all.
What? Are you saying my egg went out for Chinese food? Is that what you're saying?
The ending is a downer one for the Goodfeathers, and it's left ambiguous whether Sasha's egg eventually hatched. Sometimes birds lay eggs that don't have anything in them, so what if all this was for nothing? What if? Another episode here, that's fine, but not one of the greats in my opinion. But on the whole, the Goodfeathers segments are better than you'd expect during Season 1. But Season 2, airing in fall 1994, is pretty much the Goodfeathers' golden age. They only get 4 episodes, but there's overall 4 episodes, and they happen to be the most prolific characters in this mini batch, getting about 29 minutes of material to themselves, the most of any segment. What happened here was the WB had already secured the rights to air Animaniacs starting in 1995, but it still had a year left to run on Fox, so all they could do was air leftovers from the first season's production run. Remember the Fox network slogan at the time, Crumbs of Entertainment on Fox? That was in honor of the Goodfeathers' promotion to the season's MVPs, and their first episode in it is We're No Pigeons. We see a new side to New York as the episode begins, with the Goodfeathers staying out late at night on the ground floor of the city, where creepier ghouls come out to play. I mean, Jay Leno's around. They get caught and tied up by a young night owl, Pipsqueak, who then admits this is his first time pigeon hunting and he's never seen one before. Bobby and Pesto take advantage of this by saying they're macaroni birds and offering a ludicrous description of what pigeons are. Ethical debate time. Bobby and Pesto are in the right to outsmart a predator like this, but Squit warns them that lies'll get him. Figured out the moral of the story yet?
Lies'll get you in the end.
Oh, whatever you say, Pinocchio.
Even though Pipsqueak is the villain of the episode, there's still an innocence to him and what he's doing. His voice actor Gabriel Luque's performance is decent. Like Skippy and Colin the Randy Beeman kid, it works at sounding more authentic than professional.
Aw, I messed up again. Hey, you swear you're not pigeons.
It's still easy to see what they're going for here. He's supposed to be a send-up of Henry Hawk, who would go after Foghorn Leghorn in a similar way. Since Foghorn's the most direct counterpart to the Goodfeathers, they're all fat birds that hail from reference humor, it was only a matter of time before this routine was referenced. And staying on Looney Tunes, no one's actually sure if this skunk Pipsqueak drags up is Pepe Le Pew. It's got the same colors, but the sticking point is that it sprays in defense rather than just being naturally smelly like Pepe. If it is Pepe, Who cares if it's undignified? It's still cool that the Goodfeathers met a Looney Tune. He's just the first of 3 animals Pipsqueak finds who then torment the Goodfeathers. Second is a sewer gator, and third is an elephant. So same flow as a Henry Hawk cartoon, just with Squit as the angel on Foghorn's shoulder that never was. You might be wondering why the setting changes from an alley at night to a zoo at daytime.
How dumb can you get?
But it's here where Squit admits the truth to this persistent little night owl hunting well into the morning, and here's where we get the chubby checker twist.
Yeah, we're Goodfeathers.
Hey, we're not allowed to hunt Goodfeathers on account of all the owls in the city made a deal with the God Pigeon.
This is hilarious. The fact that God Pigeon arranged this deal regarding the safety of the Goodfeathers and didn't tell them is next level bossing. But whoa, the real ending is that Pipsqueak ties them up again anyway, because he can't trust their Goodfeathers if they lied about being macaroni birds. So yeah, a little ham-fisted, the moral of the story is don't lie and all that, but the way they learn it by telling the truth and then having to pay for the lie adds an entertaining wrinkle. Speaking of wrinkles, the worst animation moment in these segments is here. There's some oddly detailed animation of Squit towards the end, an intense look of dread on his face when confronted by Pesto. He's been through this over a dozen times already, why is he so much more terrified here? But other than that, this is another decent episode. Moving on to the 68th episode package, and the luckiest for the Goodfeathers, as they get both main segments to themselves. On their own, they add up to about 15 minutes, so it's got nearly 5 minutes of padding. I would say this makes the Goodfeathers stand out more as the main attraction, but what about all those previous times we saw them? In any case, Miami Mamma Mia is a special one, as it's the first time we meet one of the Goodfeathers' parents, Pesto's mother Molly, voiced by Lainey Kassan.
Pesto! Oh, my precious little squab!
She only gets this one scene introducing herself, her continued affection for her son, not her daughter though, oof, and her fiancé. She's retired in Miami and remarrying, implicitly because her first husband moved to a farm. Squit would prefer she be lonely for the rest of her life, but Bobby talks some sense into him.
Moms shouldn't date or get married. They should just stay moms.
Forget about it. Moms are pigeons too.
But anyway, her fiancé is Danny Phantom.
Don't worry, Pesto. I'll be a good father to you.
Yes, that's David Kaufman playing Steven Seagull, no relation to the Punani singer. In fact, I don't know why he's named Steven Seagull, because David Kaufman is well known as a Michael J. Fox sound-alike, and that I think could have been way more embarrassing for Pesto to have as a father. That is the conflict they've settled on, Pesto hating his new dad, but not for the reason any children of divorce watching might have trouble connecting with theirs at first, because he's a chipper lad half his age. Pesto's so mad at Steven that he plans on getting him into an accident before the wedding. Lucky for them, they're in Florida. Just like We're No Pigeons, this is an episode with 3 points of slapstick. Here, it's in the locations they go to and the hazards that can emerge there. They go to the Everglades, a boardwalk, and the ocean, and Pesto gets eaten by an alligator, trash can, and shark. The Goodfeathers individually and as a group suffer a lot of slapstick violence across the show, and this is the episode where one of them tries to turn the tables and inflict their pain onto someone else. And if you have a sick mind, part of it might want to see Steven suffer. Not saying I would, he's doing a good job as a father actually, but boy is he patronizing. What Pesto's doing isn't right by any stretch, but you can understand why a guy who already doesn't keep his cool around a fellow younger associate, Squit, wouldn't want one as a dad. But eventually, the wedding happens, and Pesto just accepts his new dad.
Ah, she's happy, he's happy. So what? Big deal, everybody's happy.
We could have seen more of Molly in the episode before this ending, but this is a story where Pesto is learning something, so it's not the end of the world. It's a rare moment of pure compassion from Pesto, but things are back to normal before you can say, hey, aren't they supposed to be like the Goodfellas? They're the 3 I come to this segment for, and they were realized well enough in Miami Mamma Mia. But now we know Pesto has a mother and a father-in-law, that the God Pigeon is an ordained priest, and you can bet these are also plot points exclusive to Right Here, Right Now. After some mime time, we come back to the magnum opus of Goodfeathers, Pigeon on the Roof. Welcome back, old friend. I already reviewed this episode 3 years ago, but I want to gawk at this episode a bit more. I am still perplexed by this thing in all the right ways. A clear takeoff on the musical play and 1971 film Fiddler on the Roof. I've seen both, and I'm still not sure what this is supposed to be within the context of Goodfeathers. The Girlfeathers plead to become egg hatchers, I get that. The God Pigeon comes over and chats with them, I get that. But then Pesto plants a coup d'etat in the midst of this, and this plot only lasts 2 scenes. Technically 3, counting the dream, then ends with him going, nah, forget about it. The main plot resumes, everyone hooks up, but the Scorsese statue gets replaced with one of Regis Philbin, putting a dent in their plans. And that's the end. Pigeon on the Roof, with its 8-minute runtime, struggles in what exactly it set out to do, parody Fiddler on the Roof. Take the hurdle West Side Pigeons faced and make it a mile taller. But as its own thing, it only accentuates the sheer absurdity of Goodfeathers as a premise, and makes you like it way more for sucking you in to the point that these are cartoon pigeons based on a gangster movie based on a true story is back of mind compared to the even loonier stuff these pigeons are doing. On the other hand, no, there is no other hand, because they've all got wings! One more full episode in season 2 after Pigeon on the Roof and its differently animated coda. So that's where the end of West Side Pigeons went. Bad Mood Bobby. I guess the theme for the 69th episode was aggression? Well, anyway, nearly every Goodfeathers episode opens with Squit narrating to set the scene, but I'll say this narration is my favorite.
Did you ever have one of those days? You know, you get up on the wrong side of the roost. You have to skip breakfast. You can't find a perch in space.
It gets the plot going while leaving the plot in a place where it can add on to the narration. Bobby's had a rough morning, nothing's gone right for him, and he's resorted to letting it out on his colleagues. He could just about knock a phone booth over. This is all completely in character. We've seen before that while Bobby likens himself the rational and respectable leader, there is something bubbling under the surface. He flies away, so Pesto and Squit discuss ways they could cheer up their pal Bobby. Yep, it's the Pesto and Squit have to work together episode. It goes well. Their personal interplay has gone overlooked besides the comedy routine they've had going on, and even that hasn't been done in every episode, so this is a chance to see how they'd plan something out by themselves. Pesto hatches all the plans, and they're mostly failures. Squit goes along with them, but never has the guts to offer his own suggestions. Because Bobby's in a bad mood, Pesto figures the only way to put him in a good mood is by making him laugh. We've got a regular comedian on our hands, laughing at the misery of pet store animals, forcing laughter out of Bobby by tickling him, and putting on a stand-up routine with the lamest jokes possible.
Oh, knock off the bad jokes, Pesto.
You think these jokes are bad? Then you should have been here yesterday. I was out of town.
Each of these scenes has something to offer comedically beyond Pesto's intentionally bad attempts at laughs. The meaner bird from Looney Tunes appears in the pet store and retaliates. I can't believe they've met 2 Looney Tunes now, and been attacked by both. The way the tickle at the train track goes is by ending super abruptly. I mean, this scene started off extra depressing, so it's good to show there was no serious danger here for these cartoon characters. And the alleyway Pesto performs in is in Hoboken, which the train apparently took them to. It looks only a little different to the alley they were in for most of We're No Pigeons, and if you're gonna have him do stand-up comedy, it should at least be in front of a brick wall. Because none of these have worked, Bobby prepares to whack him, but then the God Pigeon saves the day by cheering him up the old-fashioned way, telling him things could be worse.
The God Pigeon says he wants that I should cheer up. Things could be worse. I could be molting.
It's a bit of a miracle the God Pigeon can just be anywhere the Goodfeathers are, from the Grand Canyon to Hoboken. I think he's got them chipped. But when Pesto claims that pigeons can't molt, he himself molts. Yes, pigeons can molt, and yes, they're ugly as sin when they do. He and Squit are back to their old ways, which lifts Bobby's mood completely. Normally, I believe humor doesn't have to come from misfortune, but this is something Bobby's known to like, and both the guys who've been annoying him all day are hurt in some way. Bad Mood Bobby says a bit about what it means to cheer up and help someone when they're down. Forcing a reaction is the wrong way to go, just be natural and helpful in your methods. Pesto and the God Pigeon had the same goal, but completely different tactics. and it's this more subtle method of help that improves Bobby's day at the last minute. And that's the Goodfeathers last season 2 episode, and the last full-length episode they get all to themselves. They were one of several segments that were de-emphasized going into the Kids WB era. I think the departure of Deanna Oliver from the writer's room to work on Casper and My Favorite Martian had something to do with it. It's a shame that they were largely absent from this era of the show. According to Tom Ruger on the Goodfeathers episode of the Animaniacast, there's a couple of Goodfeathers episode pitches that were scrapped, including a Christmas episode where they're Santa deniers.
I'll read you this one, okay? The pigeons don't believe in Santa Claus. They're tough guys, and they think that Christmas is a holiday for bleeding hearts and saps. Then a kind old man gives them some food as they're freezing out in the cold, and it infuses them with the Christmas spirit. In the end, as they're flying over the city, they look up to see the old man sailing away in a sleigh pulled by rain. Oh, man!
The most plot relevance any of them got in season 3 was this pun for hire, where this Maltese pigeon statue resembles Squit, clearly looking jazzed that it's playing a part in the founding of DreamWorks. I guess another big break for Squit is in the big rap party tonight where he's choking on some food, but aside from that and being among the dehydrated citizens in Gunga Dosh, they don't have much going for them in season 3. The fourth was a little kinder to them as they got their first episode in 2 years, Boids on the Hood. It's a red day in the gang's new home of Burbank. Now this is new, we never see the Scorsese statue in the Kids WB era at all. I'm guessing the Regis Philbin statue stuck, and the Goodfeathers have scouted the whole country looking for a new perch, but I'm dipping into headcanon, so back to the plot. They get hit by a car, Roger Plotz's car, twice, then get kicked away by him. So Pesto gets another one of his plans, and that's to circle his car while Ralph is cleaning it to the tune of Ride of the Valkyries, a la Apocalypse Now. The exact plan is heavily implied, but not seen, and just going there is enough to raise an eyebrow. The show largely stayed away from the most lowbrow and obvious joke you could make with pigeons, and I'm not even sure it wants to commit to it here. You hear some splatters, but the car doesn't seem to be covered in corrosive urine, just the dents Ralph made by trying to protect it. If I'm gonna be honest, this is my least favorite Goodfeathers episode, it just doesn't have the sauce. It might have had to do with its production. It was originally titled The Flight of the Goodfeathers, and was to start with the Goodfeathers arguing over who the best director is, then peck around Roger Plotz's country club, then get into trouble, before finally going into a Ride of the Valkyries parody. It was truncated because the country club stuff wasn't clicking, and beginning with them arguing over directors must have made no sense. They all worship Martin Scorsese, that's their thing. It was 1996, so I could have seen them arguing over whether Goodfellas or Casino was better. I'm Team Goodfellas, by the way. I get why they truncated it and turned it into something else, and Lance Falk didn't turn out anything bad here, but I'm left with less than usual. The Goodfeathers would make still spotty but more frequent appearances across seasons 4 and 5. By 5, nearly every single one was just a reference to Squit and Pesto's routine. They were keeping them around for potential future use, but didn't seem to have any ideas for them at the moment. Their last segment, Birds on a Wire, is the shortest of all, clocking in at 1 minute and 12 seconds, and it seems to be an unused scene from Hooray for North Hollywood. Their role in that episode was as cameos commenting on the sky as the sun sets around their location and, to a lesser extent, their show. Birds on a Wire is the same deal, but they get into a tiff over which direction the breeze is coming from.
The breeze is coming from the ocean.
Yeah, and the ocean is west. The mountains are north.
Who cares? North, south. It's a beautiful sunrise.
It's not much, but it's just a little more Goodfeathers, and it has significance as the last segment to focus on one specific cast. The latter two in episode 99, the scoring session and the Animaniacs suite, are ensemble pieces. Their role in the scoring session is to appear to man the chimes, then disappear for most of it, then go on their union break. And the Animaniacs suite includes them in their concluding medley for the show. It's pretty neat that the Goodfeathers got the last starring segment to themselves, and appeared in every segment of the final episode. But before Animaniacs was over for a good 2 decades there was still Wakko's Wish left to enjoy. The Goodfeathers' role in the all intents and purposes finale movie was small, and I think it had to do with the timing. By the time Wakko's Wish released, Goodfellas was nearly a decade old. They were in that awkward phase of not being a fresh parody, but not yet something that was certifiably timeless. At least it's a good ending for the trio. First being brought in after the halfway point, they're under the command, or at least incarceration, of King Salazar, who sends them out to the Wishing Star, but not before verbally abusing them. So once they're up in the air, they decide to split off and go after the Wishing Star themselves, wishing for respect.
Forget what the king wants. Let's get what we want.
You mean?
You got it.
On the way, they sing a song with the rest of the cast, literally bump into Pinky and the Brain, and are treated with less respect than ever by Farfik Newton, really hammering it in that they have nowhere to go but up in the pecking order, and that they're some of the most deserving of this Wishing Star's properties. When the king catches up to everyone, he takes care to trap the Goodfeathers, calling them rats with wings again, and that's the last they're seen until the epilogue. After everything's hunky-dory, the Goodfeathers' happy ending is that they're free from King Salazar and finally get a place where they can be seen by many awestruck folks. Not noticed, but seen.
Those three are the best.
I believe Minerva meant the Goodfeathers. That could be Cope. That could be the notion that Animaniacs wouldn't have gone as far as it did without the support of, well, supporting characters like the Goodfeathers. Even though most of the marketing then and now is focused on the Warners and Pinky and the Brain, Animaniacs was at its best when you weren't sure who was coming up next. As good as the big three segments are, you need a change of pace from time to time. And for my money, the Goodfeathers are the most underrated segment on Animaniacs. They lived in a different world to the others that played by its own rules. It didn't have to be super over the top and subversive with its comedy, because the novelty of its premise and characters carried a lot of its own appeal. If I had to list them from worst to best, my choices would be Boids on the Hood, The Boids, Birds on a Wire, Miami Mamma Mia, with 3 you get Eggroll, We're No Pigeons, No Place Like Homeless, Bad Mood Bobby, Do Boys, Ta-da-dump, 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 dump dump, Girlfeathers, Hiccup, Goodfeathers the Beginning, Raging Bird, West Side Pigeons, and best of all, Pigeon on the Roof. They were entirely worthy of their own retrospective, going through every episode and showing the world that there's always something new you can do with them. Will they ever come back? Who knows? But if anyone wants to hear it from me, I could always tap one of the other Animaniacs segments sometime. Everyone knows them, and it could always be their time in the sun next. Until then...
Hey, stay cool.
Maybe someday our ship will come in. Meantime, being a good feather isn't so bad.